Okay, so basically what we're going to be looking at is how to take the photos that you might take off your iPad. I've used an iPad in particular because it's a somewhat more advanced process than other cameras and similar devices. But if you were just using a compact camera, then some, if not most, of all of these instructions will still apply. But for today's presentation, we'll be focusing on the iPad. And we'll be taking the photos off the iPad's camera roll. That's the place in the iPad where photos are stored when you use the camera application on your iPad. And we'll be taking them through to PowerPoint. And in PowerPoint, we'll be creating the actual slideshow presentation of those photographs. Now, just a little note about the iPad. Now, I don't know if anyone on this list is familiar with an iPad or has used one previously to take photographs. But in particular, there's a program called iPhoto, which you can download an application onto your iPad. And this is on the screen, a sort of a screenshot of one of the more recent versions, if not the most recent version of iPhoto. And what you'll get with iPhoto is, if you can see the screen there, where I've highlighted it with a red sort of circle around the image name, you will notice that each image taken by the camera is simply named in a certain sequence. So the first one, for example, would be image number 1, following this pattern, IMG underscore, and then 4 numbers. So the first image would just be 0001. Then it goes 0002, etc. And well, obviously, I guess you might not be able to fit 9,999 photos on your iPad, but it would go up to that sort of number. And that's one of the key bits of information that we're going to be focusing on in relation to today's webinar. In particular, because when you take a lot of photographs while on the iPad, it is quite convenient to be able to set up little galleries and sort your photos according to date and other things like that, or even do that on your computer as well with programs like Picasa. In some cases, those features that you use within that program for sorting photographs don't necessarily translate when you go to copy all of those photographs onto your computer. So we're going to be going through a reasonably manual process which doesn't involve having to synchronize your iPad with your computer, or assuming you have iTunes installed or any of those other sorts of programs. Okay. So the first thing you will need to have, obviously, is you'll need to have one of these 30-pin, or the smaller one if you've got a more recent iPad, to USB cables, so you can plug your iPad directly into your computer. You'll probably have one with your recharging kit if you've ever bought an iPad, and it comes with a little adapter that plugs into the wall, and the original ones just had a USB socket on the back of the plug that went into the wall. So that's the cable that you would use. Now, this is probably the most critical and important bit when you're plugging your iPad into your computer. What will happen is, when you do this for the first time, although each consecutive time it probably won't come up with this same screen again, is it will ask you, on the iPad screen, mind you, whether your computer, or if you want to look at it this way, whether the iPad should be trusted with that particular computer. This is to do with viruses, or just, in effect giving permission to say that, yes, I do want my iPad to work with this particular computer. So all you need to do is just click on that button, which I can see someone's helpfully highlighted that for me on the screen. Thank you, Keith, I think it is. And once you press that button, what will happen next, if we move to the next slide, is you actually see a little icon that appears on your computer when you go looking for devices, not unlike a digital camera. when you plug it into your computer. So yeah, exactly. Again, where that sort of little sun-looking shape is there, it'll show you where the icon is when you look at your computer. Now, by the way, I'm using Windows 7 Professional for this demonstration and these screenshots. If you're using Windows 8, it may be slightly different, and we may have to look into that a little bit further if you aren't able to see a similar looking screen. But hopefully either Keith, myself, or someone else on this list will be able to point out anything where Windows 8 might be slightly different from these instructions. And as you can see, and again, Keith has helpfully highlighted it for me, I've got a whole list of different devices attached to my computer. And one of them is this one here. If I just click on it, for example, that one there is that one there, well, I'll sort that in a second. That was my USB port. And I've got a whole lot of other things, but normally when you have your computer devices, you will probably only see maybe that one there, where it says Windows 7, in my case, the C drive. You might even see that one there, or even this one here, where it says Media or F. Can everybody see that where I've highlighted it next to the F drive on the screen there? Maybe try and, yep, okay, that's good. So, and by the way, there is this thing over here too called the iCloud Photos. I'm not going to be using that, and the reason is that the iCloud Photos are, I believe, used for a system called the PhotoStream, I think it's called, on the iPad. I think if someone looks at their iPad, they might be able to double check that. We're only looking at the thing called the camera roll. So if you find at any time during this process that you can't find the photo that you're looking for, but it does actually exist on your iPad, chances are that you will need to copy it and move it into the camera roll for this process to succeed. Okay, so let's just go on to the next slide. Now, what I've done there is sort of a rather graphical way of just trying to show the sequence of icons, in this case, that you click on and open, and that will take you on your iPad to the folder where you should see all of your photos. So if I click here for a second, this is our iPad. And if I just go back one slide for a second, just to show you, this is this icon here on the computer. And then we double click on that, and then that will take us to this little folder here. And it may look slightly different depending on how you're viewing the folders on your computer. And then what you need to do is to double click on that and turn again. And then you should get to a folder like this. And you may be relatively familiar with this folder, because if you've ever plugged a digital camera into your computer and looked on the memory card of that camera, you will see a folder with that same name. It's a sort of a generic or standard folder name that's used across a wide range of devices. And inside that folder again, as I've highlighted in red here, this folder is the folder on your iPad where your camera roll is located. So at the moment, we're basically looking at just the folders on the actual iPad itself. We haven't copied anything yet. And just one little final note. I don't know for sure, and you might want to double check for this on your iPad yourself, but the name of this folder, which for me is 860OKMZO, may or may not be the same as the folder on your iPad. So you might want to double check that, but whatever that folder is, there probably should only be one of those folders anyway, so that will be the one that you open. Now, when you open that folder that we were just talking about before, you will see a bunch of photographs in that folder. In my case, I've got these folders in what we call the medium icon view. Now, normally when you have your files on your computer, or in this case on the iPad, you can view them in Windows in different ways. It can be a detail mode, detail view, or it can be an icon view. And in this case, I've got them in the icon view. That's right, Keith. And you'll also notice, if you have a look here, that there is actually one of the screenshots that I took on my iPad so that I could actually make this, or the previous slide that you would have seen just before. And that's actually stored as a photo in the camera roll as well. Okay. So there is the details view. And again, you'll see here that you just see the image names rather than the icons that represent the photo in question. But you will also notice, especially on this one here, where I've got it highlighted, that you will see a little icon down here that represents the content of that photograph. And that is important to know because, especially in detail view, when you just get a whole lot of images like this, it's very difficult to see which photo is which. So at the very least, you should be able to look down here and see that image. Now, if anyone wants to know how to view that image, if it's not on their computer, or it's not on their computer when they're displaying their folders like this, it's under Organize. You click on Organize, there'll be a little menu down there, and then let me just, I might be able to share a screen and show you in a second what that looks like.